Stop.
Alrighty, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to CTE. I'm Henry. This is Theo.
What up, you cucks?
Happy holidays. Hope you all had a good one. And today we're going to be doing the first annual CTE Awards. So this will be a thing we do every year. And, everybody else is doing it. DC, RC, ESPN, MMA Junkie, all these fuckers are doing this shit. So I thought, why not we do it too? So we're going to go straight into it with our first award of the year.
Wonderful way to wrap up the year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, not so much with 296. Kind of a shitty card to end the year off, and we got to wait until fucking January 20th for 297, which is kind of an underwhelming card too. But regardless,
What a year.
very solid year, for
Very-
sure. Bunch of unforgettable moments, unforgettable fights. Guys making it to the top that we didn't think would,
Yeah.
compared to where they started, all this shit. So we're going to hop
Legends
right into it.
returning,
We got about 9 awards here. I did a few that, a lot of other people aren't doing. Most of the other guys are just doing like male fighter of the year, female fighter of the year, fight of the year, submission of the year, all the basic shit. I got a couple other ones thrown in there for, because why not? We got 9 total awards here. But we're going to start it off with the male fighter of the year. I'm going to start with my honorable mentions here, and then I'll tell you who we ended up giving it to. So, first honorable mention, you gotta have Islam in there for sure.
100%.
You can't not dismiss what he's done this year. A lot of people have him as their male fighter of the year, but I just don't think 2 wins over Volk. Yes, that's very impressive, very solid. Second one under different circumstances though. If it was full camp Volk in that second win and he beat him again off of full camp, then maybe I would consider having him as my fighter of the year.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, the circumstances surrounding the second fight and how he basically almost lost the first fight with Volk on a full camp, I'd have to knock him down a peg compared to who I do have as my male fighter of the year. But nonetheless, got to give Islam some props.
100%.
Great year.
Phenomenal year for him. And to put him, obviously, to put a Volk away in the second fight the way he did. Have not seen Volk get finished in the,
10 years.
UFC before.
Yeah.
So it's, it's phenomenal for what he's done. Back-to-back wins off of him. Obviously, looks like he's probably going to be the champion for years to come in the division.
Yeah, for
I don't
sure.
really see anyone in there beating him. Maybe someone will get, lucky off and catch him or something. But I think right now, technically, I just don't think there's anyone who's going to beat him. What a year for him, but just as
Definitely,
you
man.
said, just didn't do
Just
quite
not
enough.
quite enough,
Yeah, just quite not
If
enough.
it was maybe a different opponent in that second fight and not Volk on a week's notice, then you could definitely argue that he's
Yeah.
male fighter of the year. Obviously,
you
DC.
can definitely make a case for it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, there's a
Definitely make
case for it. I've seen a lot of people picking him as their male fighter of the year, which like I said, I understand that.
Right.
He looked great this year. The first fight with Volk, all-time classic, like unforgettable fight. We'll get into that later. But yeah, it was a solid year. He fought more than once, so congratulations for not just fighting one time
Yeah.
this year, you motherfucker. At least he got in there twice, and
And-
for a Dagestani, we don't see that.
Yeah, and
So-
of course, DC. He's DC's fighter.
Yeah,
We wonder
DC's
why.
fighter of the year, it's Islam. What?
What a surprise!
No way, dude.
He
Who would have
He would
thought?
have fought one time and beat Volk.
Yeah.
DC would have been like, he's
If
got to be my
Islam just
fighter.
didn't fight this entire year,
Yeah.
DC would still be like, male fighter of the year, I got
I've
Islam.
got Islam.
Like, regardless of any other fighter, DC's always going with Islam because
Right.
he can't get that Dagestani meat out of his mouth. So, but yeah, first honorable mention, Islam Makhachev 2-0, defended the lightweight title 2 times successfully against Volk, who was number 1 pound for pound during the first fight. And what was he? I think still number 1 pound for pound during the second fight
Yeah, I think they
too.
were tied
So
still.
having 2 wins over the number 1 pound for pound guy, very good year. But anyways, moving on. Second honorable mention, gotta go with Tom Aspinall here. Definitely, I saw fucking RC who picked Tom Aspinall as his male fighter of the year, which is a bit crazy. But nonetheless, he definitely still deserves to be mentioned here. 2-0 this year, KO'd Marcin Tarbora in the first round, and then went on to KO Pavlovich in the first round on like a week or two's notice with a back injury to win the interim heavyweight title. So very solid year for him as well.
100%.
especially coming off that knee injury,
Yeah,
all that shit. So Aspinall definitely deserves to be mentioned here as well.
100%.
The first win against Marcin Tybura, I mean, Tybura is not really anything crazy. So since that win is that was basically just a gimme return fight for him after the
Right.
knee injury, and he just starched him easily, no problems.
Was expected. I mean,
And
but
which,
yeah,
yeah, we
it's
all knew
you
that
got
was
to
going to
give him a
happen.
fight back, especially
Yeah.
after a knee injury like
If
that.
that
Just
win was
welcome him
over a
back.
higher caliber guy, maybe he would potentially, you know, maybe be the male fighter of the year. But
Hmm.
since that Marcin Tybura win's kind of just, whatever, okay, he KO'd him. We all thought that was going to happen.
Right.
But the main reason he's being mentioned is for that Pavlovich KO, which
100%.
was just incredible. And, with the injury going into that, no camp, uh, short notice, goes in there, KO's the most dangerous guy in the division pretty easily,
Hmm.
and just secures himself the interim title. So we will see what happens next with him. But overall, he had a great year as well.
And
Yeah.
to the next point with that, kind of not so much of an injury, but with a knockout,
Yeah.
I had Pereira.
Yeah.
You got to bring up him for a honorable mention
For
for his
sure.
year.
100%.
What he was able to do after coming off of that Izzy knockout. Obviously, a lot of people were questioning what he was going to do. He goes up to 205,
Which he
beats
did.
Jan
Yeah.
Blachowicz, and then is able to knock out Prosko to get the belt.
Yeah.
So that's just able to come off of a year like that and getting
Yeah,
knocked
to
out in the
bounce back
beginning
after being completely
and
slaughtered by
slumped.
Izzy and put out
Right.
cold.
Well,
And
and if we're being honest, he was winning that fight. If that fight goes
he
on any probably
was.
another round, he
Izzy was
wins that
in
fight.
trouble.
Izzy was in trouble, and like obviously Izzy was able to put him away. So him being out cold like that to bounce back in 2 wins, definitely another honorable mention, another
Yeah,
great year for him.
for sure. If he didn't have that loss to Izzy, he would probably be
He'd
my
probably
male
be up
fighter of
there,
the year.
right?
I'd say just
Because think
because,
about it, if he wins that fight, he's 3-0,
yeah,
and maybe
and
obviously he
double
doesn't
champ.
take the does he take
Yeah,
the course of going to
maybe
205?
not.
We
Yeah,
don't know, but regardless, with that loss to be able to come back and win 2 fights and relatively quick.
yeah,
He fought
yeah,
twice in that year. He fought 3 times in in the year.
yeah, which a lot of guys don't
After
do.
getting knocked out cold.
Yeah, which
Very
most guys
impressive.
would have taken the rest of that year off and
It's
not fought.
100% right.
But Pereira, he's not here for a long time. He's here for a good time.
He's
So
different.
he came in after that Izzy knockout, fought a super dangerous guy in Jan Blachowicz up a weight class, was able to fucking weather the storm and beat him by decision, and then goes on to KO the most dangerous guy at 205 in Yuri Prohaska.
Right.
And that finish has aged well, I'd say. I mean, at the time, a lot of people were complaining about it being early and stuff, but I think the general consensus nowadays is that, like, okay, yeah, that was a legit finish.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So,
At first I felt it was a little bit early, but now looking back on it,
yeah,
I'm pretty
no,
happy with
phenomenal
the
year for Alex. I mean, he's arguably one of the most popular fighters in the UFC now after this year.
100%.
I mean, last year was more so his, like, rise to getting to Izzy and all that shit, but this year was the year he solidified himself as one of the biggest draws and just most fascinating and
fan favorites.
entertaining fighters to watch. Yeah, fan favorite. So we got to have Alex Pereira in the honorable mentions as well. But for our last honorable mention, a guy that not a lot of people are given necessarily much props to for the year he's had is Alexander Pantoja, who's, had one of the best fights of the year against Moreno, and then had a quick turnaround and defended said title against a dangerous guy in Royval, and went 2-0 for the year with a title win and a title defense. So you got to have him in there for sure.
Yeah, definitely to wrap it up with a good honorable mention. No, yeah, back-to-back wins to gain the belt, and then obviously a war with Moreno, one of the fights of the year contender,
for sure.
I think on everybody's list.
Yeah.
And then to turn around relatively quick and go to work against Royval. And there's definitely spots in there where he looked tired and stuff like that, but overall
with that quick of a
performance.
turnaround, I don't necessarily blame him for that,
Right.
And like the amount of damage he took in that Moreno fight to come back and then have another 5-round war with another dangerous guy in the division, and solidify himself as the best flyweight in the world. So great year for him. I've seen nobody talking about his year, and I mainly say that's because he's a flyweight. A lot of flyweights don't get a lot of props and a lot of recognition, but I think he definitely deserves to be mentioned for going 2-0 with the title win and defense for sure.
100%.
So those are the honorable mentions for male fighter of the year. But at the end of the day, there's only one guy left, and it's fucking Deshaun Strickland is the CTE male fighter of the year for 100%. Sure. Phenomenal year for Sean Strickland. Ended 2022 on a 2-fight losing streak, getting butchered by Poatan, and then losing a close decision to Jared Cannonier, and then started the year with a decision victory over Nasruddin Mavov, which was a good win. Came back, finished Abus Magomedov, fraud checked him, and then got his short notice chance against Izzy and put on one of the best performances of the year while gaining the title and becoming a champion. So with the way he ended 2022 and the way he carried himself through this year to become a world champion when no one thought he really would or was capable of getting to that status, I think you got to give it to him.
100%.
I think you just have to.
I mean, just yeah, exactly what you said. Just the way he's coming into the year 0-2, getting butchered by Pereira, and then losing a close one there to Cannonier. But overall, you're 0-2 coming into the year. What is going to happen with you? You're more than likely you lose another one or two.
He's ranked number 8 after those 2 losses. Could have definitely just faded into obscurity out of the rankings.
100%. If you lose another fight or two, you're probably going to get cut. They're going to be done with you.
Yeah.
You got to turn it around. You go out and get a good win there, so they're just back on track, and then you get a finish there, and then suddenly they throw you the bone of the title.
Yeah, and he makes the most of it.
And you make the most of it and put on arguably the best performance of the year.
Yeah.
And, you beat Izzy and force Izzy to take some time and reevaluate and everything, but either way, you're the champion now, and it goes through you. So you, from the beginning of the year, you're 0-2 to sitting at the end of the year with the belt.
3-0 with the title.
With the belt. And, you're looking at fighting Dickless to Pussy.
Yep.
For UFC 297.
And now a lot of people, like, Sean's the favorite against DDP now. If we're going back a year.
He looks extremely good in camp right now.
Yeah.
He looks like he really fucking wants to win this fight. And we're going to see what's going to happen. I don't mean, like,
I think
for him,
he continues a phenomenal
his reign.
year.
He's a fan favorite now. The UFC loves him.
Yeah.
People love him. The fans
Another
love him.
guy that's catapulted himself into a household name, a fan favorite, a guy that, people liked him before his title run and his run up to the title and stuff, but he was more so seen as kind of a joke.
Yeah.
And then after that Izzy performance, people take him seriously now. Obviously, he still says the same stupid shit and all that, but that's why people like him. And he's a world champion. So I think Deshaun Strickland had the best year out of any male fighter, so he definitely deserves the award.
Yeah, 100%.
So that is our CTE Male Fighter of the Year. Moving on. Female Fighter of the Year. We're going to start with our honorable mentions here. My first female honorable mention, I got Erin Blanchfield. Pretty solid year. Went 2-0. Pretty solid win over Tyler Santos. Standing rear naked choke Jessica Andrade. Worked her way up the rankings and is now being seen as a pretty big threat to the title at flyweight. So I think she had a pretty phenomenal year, to say the least, and deserves to be mentioned here for sure. 2-0, 2 solid wins over ranked opponents, climbed her way up the rankings, and now put herself in a position to be in that title eliminator. So if she gets through that, she'll get that title shot against Grasso or whoever is holding the belt at the time. So definitely a good year for her. But moving on, second honorable mention, gotta throw Amanda Nunes in there.
Obviously the GOAT.
The GOAT.
You gotta mention it. Goes 1-0, wins her fight, beats
Irene Aldana.
Yeah, beats Irene Aldana. So obviously it wasn't a very impressive. Nothing crazy.
She destroyed her, and it was like a 50-44.
Yeah, exactly. Just beat the shit out of her like she always has. She's the greatest female fighter of all time. It's not close, and she's proven that. So she does what she does, and then gets to retire on top as the greatest of all time. So you got to just
exactly. Just even though it was only one fight. And some people were picking her as their female fighter of the year, which I understand.
Right.
I get it. But at the same time, it's like for one win over Irene Aldana, who's not elite. I mean, she's good. Don't get me wrong. She just had one of the craziest fights of the year on the prelims at 296. Yeah. But with that performance against Nunes, she looked like dog shit. And it was a good fight from Nunes, but still, it was only one fight. She retired afterwards against not necessarily that dangerous of an opponent,
right?
But still deserves to be mentioned.
But yeah, just solidifies herself as a GOAT.
But anyways, yeah, those are the honorable mentions for female fighter. At the end of the day, though, we're got to give the award to Alexa Grasso here.
100%.
For the submission finish over Shevchenko at UFC 285. No one thought that was going to happen. One of the biggest upsets of the year. And then the rematch, even though it was a draw, a lot of people say, oh, Shevchenko robbed her, Grasso robbed her. Should have been a draw. Shevchenko won the 5th round, or They shouldn't have scored it a 10-8, whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever nonsense went down for it to end up being a draw that a lot of people disagreed with. It was still a good performance from Grasso, and she dropped Shevchenko. She showed out. She came to fight and ended up walking away with the title and remain as champion, even though it was a draw. So I think for those two performances and the finish over Shevchenko, who hasn't been finished in fucking whoever knows how long. It's been forever, and is one of the best female fighters of all time. Wasn't expected to lose her title anytime soon. And then Grasso comes in and finishes her, and then has a great performance in the rematch. So I think, with all that being said, I think that's enough for her to win the award. So
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you said it. Just being able to even finish Shevchenko. I mean, I understand that Shevchenko put herself in one of the with one of the worst spinning kicks, and just a terrible decision. But regardless, she was able to take advantage of that and took her back, subbed her, and no one expected that. No one saw that coming. And then to be able to relatively put on an extremely good performance and hang with her in that rematch, I ultimately thought Shevchenko had done enough and won the fight, but they ended up giving it to
the draw.
The draw, which I didn't agree with, but they have I'm the judge, so my opinion doesn't matter. But I think what she was able to do is even able to just upset Shevchenko and be arguably one of the greatest female fighters of all time.
For sure. I mean, she went 1-0-1, so she only won one fight with the finish and then had the draw. Didn't lose any fights this year.
Right.
Which, looking at it on paper, you're like, how is that female fighter of the year? But it's who she fought, how she performed, and walked away with the belt, or still champion by the end of the year, going into next year. So, female fighter of the year was a bit harder because of, obviously there's not a whole lot to go off of. I mean, we have Nunes with 1 win in our honorable mentions, and then Blanchfield 2-0 over, two good wins, but still, you know what I mean. It wasn't as
for the belt. It's where they started at the beginning of the year and kind of ended at
exactly.
The end.
So overall, I think Grasso had the best year out of any other woman in the UFC. So at the end of the day, Alexa Grasso is the CTE Female Fighter of the Year. But moving on to Fight of the Year. So this one, I kept going back and forth between two fights. I'm not going to say what they are because we're going to get into it as I talk about them, but it was a bit of a toss-up. But overall, you'll see the one we ended up picking. But first honorable mention has got to be Jalen Turner versus Dan Hooker at UFC 290. Just a badass fight, man. Fucking Dan Hooker eating that head kick like it's nothing. And then, which I think was in the second round, it started off pretty rough for Hooker early in that fight, and then he just weathered the storm and then started fucking piecing up Turner. It looked like he showed moments of how he looked in that Poirier fight. Like, you saw prime Hooker come back in that fight, and he was landing
so happy watching that.
Yeah, dude, that fight gets me amped up. I rewatched it a couple days ago. It's such a great fight. If you disagree with me and don't think this fight deserves to be mentioned, just go watch it again. It really does. It was fucking awesome. The crowd was awesome during it. The performance from Dan Hooker, one of the best performances of the year. To weather the storm and the adversity from that head kick and a broken arm, a broken orbital, and to go on to just whoop his ass in the later rounds and drop him a couple times and just win that fight was just fucking it was incredible. So
it was watching every moment of that fight, I was on the edge of my seat. Huge Dan Hooker fan. So
you had that bet on him, right?
Yeah. Watching him able to come back, not only win me money, but just put on that performance, was able to just beat the living shit out of.
Because I was one of the guys that was saying like, "Oh, Turner's gonna walk through him and fuck him up,"
and I just knew something in me because Hooker was gonna be able to do it. I knew because
Hooker hadn't looked that great going into that fight. I mean, he had the bad loss to Islam, which was on short notice, whatever, and then he beat a couple cans, and then they fed him to Jalen Turner. So I was like, "Oh, okay."
He lost to Chandler too. He got knocked out by Michael Chandler.
Yeah, that was before the Islam loss and stuff. But yeah, you're right. He was going on like a bit of a a loss, a win, a loss. Like, he was very inconsistent and looked like he was kind of fading out of his prime. So Jalen Turner was the logical pick for that fight, in my opinion. But Turner Hooker rather showed out and fucking proved that he still belongs in the top 10.
Yeah, and it just made me so happy being able to watch.
Yeah, it was an iconic performance that always gets me amped
As you
up.
said, seeing signs of just prime Dan Hooker and being
Yeah,
able to
when he
watch
had
him
Turner
come
up
back.
against the cage and started throwing those fucking combos that he did against Poirier, it was
Oh,
it
beautiful.
was awesome. So Dan Hooker, Jalen Turner, one of the best fights of the year, hands down.
100%.
Second honorable mention, we got Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev at UFC 286. Another badass fight that I just rewatched a couple days ago, and just back and forth. It was a lot more back and forth than people think. I feel like a lot of people are like, "Oh, Gaethje whooped his ass," but if you go back and watch it, like Fiziev was in that shit. He was in there,
Oh,
and
dude,
he was doing
Spacey was
well.
definitely delivering some blows and like he was definitely hanging in the pocket and everything. I mean, the damage and like whether they looked like after the
Fiziev's
fight was
face, dude.
definitely on obviously Gaethje's side.
Yeah,
Fiziev looked terrible, but if you watch the fight, yeah, it was definitely a
it
back and
was
forth
close.
war.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gaethje was getting the better of it, but yeah,
Gaethje's power was the difference, man. I mean,
Fiziev stuck right in there and was delivering blows
yeah.
right
He
back.
was throwing bombs. Gaethje's chin looked insane in that
Hmm.
fight. He ate some huge shots from Fiziev. Uh, Gaethje just kept attacking that eye, dude. At the end of that fight, Fiziev's eye looked fuck. He looked like he'd been in a car crash, man.
Yeah.
Gaethje's power at 55 is just ridiculous. A lot of people, again, same thing with the Turner Dan Hooker fight. A lot of people thought Gaethje was just being fed to the wolves here, with the up and coming, young, hungry, potential title contender in Fiziev. And then Gaethje goes out and proves that he's still top five. So
Yeah.
it was an awesome performance. Another fight that if you only watched once this year, go rewatch it. It's another treat. So that is the second honorable mention for fight of the year. On to number 3, we got Jeff Neal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov at UFC 285. Another fucking banger
Yes.
that I rewatched a couple days ago as well, and it was just fucking insane. Like Jeff Neal, most of these fights that are on here, like they go differently from how people thought they were gonna go. Like a lot of people thought Rakhmonov was just gonna run through Jeff Neal,
Yes.
but then Jeff Neal goes in there and puts out a gutsy performance and is able to hang in there with him.
And the fight was nothing like. If you're not a hardcore fan, you're not going to appreciate this pick. But when we watch this fight,
Yeah,
it's just such a back and forth war. Both of
yeah.
them had multiple opportunities to
Oh
finish each
yeah,
other and put
dude.
each other away. The recovery of both of them,
Yeah,
the
Shavkat's
control,
recovery
like there was
nuts,
plenty of
dude.
moments where they were just kind of on the fence, like shoving up. But just the bombs when they were connecting,
Oh
the
yeah,
head
dude.
kicks, like all of it, and then to get the rear naked, the
The
standing rear
standing rear
naked, and
naked,
just
dude.
it was a phenomenal.
Impressive.
And again, as you were saying, just another one of the situations where you felt that they were just feeding Jeff Neal to the Shavkat, and then
Yeah.
Shavkat was just going to run through him, get his 17th easy victory, and go on.
Yeah.
And it goes into the third fight. I mean, the third round, and it's what like almost a minute left before he gets that finish.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah. So
war,
it was a war, man.
phenomenal
Jeff
fight.
Neal had some moments in that fight
Hmm.
where I don't know how Shavkat ate those shots, man. There was one in particular where Neal just cracks the fuck out of him.
Yeah,
And he looked like he was invisible, like he was in he was in deep shit. He was definitely in trouble. And he's just Shavkat's chin is just ridiculous, and his recovery and all that shit. And even Jeff Neal showed moments of that too. Up until that last shot that Shavkat cracked him with to over, which led to him getting the rear naked choke. He was eating most of those shots as well. So that's another fight that definitely deserves to be mentioned for fight of the year.
100%.
And last honorable mention, which is going to make our pick of the year be pretty obvious, but it's got to be Moreno versus Pantoja 3 at UFC 290 as
Yes.
our last honorable mention. Almost was this close to overall being my pick for fight of the year, but there's one that was just a little bit too special that
Yeah,
had
I
to.
mean
Yeah.
this fight, if you put it at your fight of the year, it makes total sense.
Oh yeah.
It is easily the second best fight of the year, in anyone else's opinion, it could be
100%.
the best fight of the year.
Yeah.
It is a phenomenal fight, just a back and forth war, so entertaining. But I think the fight that we went with for fight of the year was just
Yeah.
what it had coming into that fight, what everyone thought was going to happen,
Just a
what
legacy
ended up
defining
happening.
fight.
Yeah, it was
But
one of
this
the greatest fights of
Pantoja
all time.
Moreno fight, it's yeah, it's probably the best flyweight title fight of all time,
100%.
for sure. So it definitely deserves all the praise in the world. Both went out there just put on a
And do
fucking
what they
show.
do. Both of them always go out there and put on wars. I
Every
love
Moreno
watching
fight
Brandon Moreno.
is just yeah,
There's not a fighter that I think right now in the UFC that's not more entertaining than watch fight.
yeah.
He
Moreno's
is easily one of the most entertaining. Every time there has not been a fight that he
he's
enters
never
that's
had a
boring.
stinker. No.
He's so entertaining, and I love watching him fight.
the back and forth exchanges in that fight. Moreno definitely getting the better of Pantoja on the feet, but Pantoja's power overall being the difference maker, where Moreno would land some nice combos and start fucking him up, but Pantoja would counter and land that one big shot and drop him to win a close round.
Yeah.
And the grappling of Pantoja ended up, just the control time and everything, the scrambles on the ground. That fight had absolutely everything, and is
Phenomenal.
it's a classic.
For sure.
So definitely has to be mentioned as our number 2 fight of the year for sure. But at the end of the day, there's only one fight that could win this. And I realized it the other day. I was like, yeah, this fight just has to be it.
Yeah. After watching both
Yeah.
of them multiple times, this one
See,
just got
this is
us.
the fight out of any fight this year I've rewatched the most.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you that it has to be that one.
It is.
And it's fucking, you guys all know what it is, but it's Islam versus Volk 1 at UFC 284. One of the best fights of all time, hands
Easily.
down.
100% in arguably in the top 5.
Yes, for sure. I'd put it up there. I really would. The general consensus of, oh, Islam's going to squash Volk like a bug. This is going to be an easy defense for
Yeah.
Islam. Light work. Volk's too small. Volk can't grapple with him. He's not built for 55. Whatever. All this shit people were saying. And for him to go out there and put on just an iconic performance for the ages that still gets talked about. The reason I think Volk Islam 1 gets the edge over Pantoja and Moreno is because people don't really talk about Pantoja Moreno. People
Yeah.
low-key already forgot about that fight. As good as it was, you don't see people being like, oh yeah, dude, that fight. I mean, you do every now and then, but when it comes to
The
Volk Islam
hardcore
1,
fans.
every single time I'm on Instagram, whatever, I see something about this fight. So it's like, it's a fight that's going to be talked about for years and years and years.
100%.
And I think it will overall overshadow what happened in the second one. And people will mainly remember this first one here, because it's the best champion versus champion fight of all time.
Easily.
Volkanovski embarrassing him in the 4th round and the 5th, getting on top of him, pounding the shit out of him to end the fight. Islam landing some really clean strikes and proving that he is just as good, if not a better striker than Volk.
Anyone.
Yeah, anyone in the UFC. This was it was a performance that showcased what a lot of people thought both guys weren't capable of doing, and they went out
Exactly.
and showed that. So overall, just extremely iconic fight. Islam Volk 1 at 284 is the CTE fight of the year.
100%.
So I think it very much deserves that award. So that's what we're going with. And now another fun one here. Knockout of the year. We'll start with our honorable mentions here. We got Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier 2 at UFC 291, that head
100%.
kick.
Just
Fucking-
never in a million years do you expect Justin Gaethje to go out there and head kick.
No,
Dustin
dude,
Poirier.
no, no one thought that.
You expect what the first fight was, which was just an absolute war. I expected Gaethje to, in this fight, to end up getting the better of him and putting Poirier away.
But
I
not
did
like that.
I did not
No.
expect that. And then you have this just devastating head kick, was just
Which Gaethje didn't really throw head kicks that
No.
much before this.
Never.
We didn't even know it was a weapon that he had in his arsenal. Because it caught Poirier off guard. Poirier wasn't
dude,
even
it caught
thinking
the
about a
world
head
off
kick.
guard. It caught
Yeah.
the UFC world off guard.
That was one of the most iconic KOs in lightweight history for sure, and one of the best of the year, hands down. Like I said, or like Theo said, a lot of people were picking Gaethje to win this fight, just because of how well he's developed as a fighter since their first encounter. But
not like that.
still, we thought it was going to be a slugfest, and then Gaethje goes out there and just knocks him the fuck out with a nasty, nasty head kick.
Yeah.
So that knockout 100% deserves to be mentioned here. One of the craziest moments of the year, for sure, to top off a very solid card in 291. So first honorable mention has to be that Gaethje head kick over Poirier.
100%.
Number 2, we got the most recent knockout that definitely has earned its place here is Josh Emmett. Absolutely starching Bryce Mitchell in the first round with one of the nastiest overhands I've ever seen. And he was out cold before he even hit the ground.
Mhm.
That's when you know it's just, like, Josh Emmett's power at 45 is
Ridiculous.
It's honestly almost unfair. If he's able to land that shot on you, you're most likely going out.
Mhm.
And he proved that, and just made easy work of Bryce Mitchell with one of the most it was disturbing how fucking, Bryce Mitchell had that seizure on the ground afterwards. We've never really seen that before. The closest thing to that was maybe when Leon head kicked Usman, and Usman was kind of twitching a little bit, but he had a full-on fucking
Yeah,
seizure from
that
that
was.
shit. So it was a very disturbing and just earth-shattering fucking knockout from Josh Emmett. So that one definitely deserves to be mentioned as one of the nastiest of the year. Another one that I don't see a lot of people talking about, I mean, maybe some people, but it's definitely not being mentioned as much as I think it should be, is Sean O'Malley's knockout of Aljamain Sterling at UFC 292.
I mean, I don't think it's getting the credit it does because it's not necessarily a finish right away. He's not out cold, knocked out, but like,
Yeah.
dude, he put him right on the ground. Aljo was not going to be back in that
And
fight.
he
That
he
fight was
did land a
over.
bunch of shots on the floor afterwards.
Yes, the
People try
ground
to
and
say
pound.
like,
He put
"Oh,
him to
Aljo was
sleep.
defending," but then he
No,
turned over on his back,
he put
looked
him
like
to
he was
sleep.
gonna,
That fight was over.
yeah,
I mean, I don't think it's getting the credit it deserves because of the fact that he didn't put him out cold. Like if he had hit him in one punch and Aljo just hit the canvas out,
yeah.
that's different. But I don't think it.
Yeah,
I don't
due
think
to it
that's why
not
it is.
being just a flush,
Yeah,
like
just straight
instant out
knockout.
cold knockout,
Yeah.
definitely takes it down a few pegs. But again, like the whole general consensus surrounding the fight beforehand of people, oh, Aljo's gonna walk through him, Aljo's gonna wrestle fuck him and submit him easily in the first round. And then O'Malley goes out there and puts him away and proved he's championship material, which a lot of people thought he was not, due to his past opponents and Piotr Jan basically being the only good guy he's fought up until then.
Yeah.
So going from fighting a bunch of cans to Piotr Jan and then the bantamweight goat and Aljo and putting him away like that, it definitely has to be mentioned. So that is our third honorable mention. But moving on. One that really kills me to bring up and that I don't have not rewatched since it happened, but you got to give it the recognition it deserves, and that's Islam's head kick over Volkanovski at 294.
I mean, devastating. Nobody expects, again, another one of those head kicks where you don't expect it to happen at all. You don't know it. You don't see Islam throwing head kicks.
Nope.
He lands a perfect head kick, just puts, Volk to sleep.
Yeah.
Instantly goes in there a ground pound, just puts him away. So yeah,
Pretty
again,
nasty
it's just one
KO.
of the nastiest KOs. It's one of the more nasty KOs we saw this year.
Yeah, I mean,
and don't expect that from Islam at all. So again,
no,
you don't. I mean, as he said, it pains both of us to bring this up.
Yeah,
Volk fans,
as
we don't
both
want to see
diehard
that.
Volk fans,
but
it's not
again,
a fun one.
Got to give the recognition it deserves.
Yeah, it was perfectly timed, perfectly placed.
Beautiful.
He went in there, took out Volk early, got out of there with no damage taken, and shushed the crowd in the process.
Yes.
So he went in there, got the job done with a nasty KO over a guy that has not been finished in 10 plus years in Volkanovski. So definitely deserves its props. And on to our last honorable mention. The reason there's this amount of honorable mentions is because there were so many fucking good KOs this year.
So many.
Okay? Usually I wouldn't do this many, but I'd pick one or I'd pick a couple out and I'd be like, oh, but what about this one or that one? So
but this year was just so good.
It was great, man. There's so many flush, just insane knockouts that weren't expected and just shocked everybody. So that's why there's so many on here. But our last one is one that I don't see people really bringing up all that much and basically has already kind of been forgotten about. And it's Aspinall's KO over Sergey Pavlovich at UFC 295.
I mean, you definitely expected someone to get put away. We definitely expected a knockout to happen in this fight, but definitely not in that quick or that fashion the way it happened. How quick Aspinall was just able to hit him twice right on the temple and put him to just sleep.
It was a nasty combo. I mean, perfectly placed, just bop bop, and then hammer fist done, and that was it.
Yeah.
And even though Aspinall was the favorite, I think most people did have Pavlovich in that fight. And since Aspinall was on short notice, coming in with the back injury, all that stuff, as we talked about before, it was a disgusting knockout. And to do it on a guy, that was as scary and as dominant as Pavlovich had been before that, with the injury and everything, extremely impressive. So definitely deserves to be mentioned as well.
100%.
But the best knockout of the year, in our opinion, is just a step above the rest. Is got to be Israel Adesanya over Alex Pereira in their second fight at UFC 287. The slick counter of throws the one shot and then throws the same shot again and then clips him with a little hook on the way down to really finish the job. and a couple hammer fists for good measure with the
Yeah.
celebration, everything. I mean,
And
hate
just
Izzy all you want,
what it meant to
but
him, how
yeah,
just to finally get this guy that's been hunting him down, that
yeah,
came into the UFC, hunted him down,
yeah, yeah,
beat him, took his
yeah,
title
dude.
from him when no one else
Took
could,
everything from him.
everything from him, and to come back and to be able to put that
His
guy out
fans, his
cold,
title.
sleep
Yeah,
in the fucking, just in front of everyone, in front of the
yeah.
world, get that celebration, everything it meant for him.
I think that just has to be
Devastating.
knockout of the year, guys. Like,
100%.
you can disagree with me all you want. If you think the Gaethje head kick's
It's
the
just more.
knockout of
It's
the
so
year,
brutal. It's such a brutal
or
knockout
the
too.
the Makachev head kick, whatever. If you think any of the ones I mentioned before that are your knockout of the year, fair enough. Like, I wouldn't say anything about that. But just everything that surrounded this one, and Izzy was in real trouble before he landed that counter. He was getting put up against the fence,
Yeah.
clinched knee, elbows, was in some deep shit, and then was able to wrap around with that fucking counter and put out a guy that's extremely difficult to finish, and Alex Pereira just completely out cold. Took him a long time to get up, and as you said, everything surrounding it, the celebration, everything. Because I mean that card wasn't all that great up until then, so
Yeah.
that ending to that card definitely made up for the lackluster fights before it. So I think that has to be the CTE knockout of the year
Agreed.
with Israel Adesanya putting out Alex Pereira. But moving on, this is one we both have our opinions aren't necessarily on the same page here. So we'll run through the honorable mentions. I'll give mine, he'll give his. But starting submission of the year, honorable mentions. I got Damon Blackshear, Jose Johnson. This one kind of flew under the radar, but it was a twister on a fight night. Wasn't really that high up the card, but it's a fucking twister. It
Yeah.
deserves to be mentioned.
Yeah.
Although
You just don't see it. You
yeah,
don't see it happen in the UFC, and just to see that being able, like, to
yeah.
see it performed in the way it was, and just how beautiful
I
it
mean, it's
was.
hard enough in itself to pull it off in like a grappling match, but to do it in an
Exactly.
MMA fight is ridiculously impressive. So, as much as these guys aren't huge names or like very highly ranked guys
Got
at
to be
all per
mentioned.
se, it's still impressive. So, had to mention that one real quick. But on to the next one. We got Shavkat's standing rear naked over Jeff Neal,
Yes.
which we've already talked about that fight. So you guys have all seen it. Not going to say too much about it, but just overall insane submission.
Hmm.
For him to crack him and then just put one hook in and just fucking,
Yeah.
put
Just
him
put
to
his
sleep
head
like
down.
that standing up. And Jeff Neal tapped like instantly,
Exactly.
which goes to show you the strength of Shavkat. So awesome submission there. Another honorable mention here, submission that doesn't get talked about at all and is just completely flown under the radar was Volkov's Ezekiel choke over Tai Tuivasa at UFC 293.
To just
I mean, Tai Tuivasa obviously not a very difficult guy to sub,
right.
but at the same time, it's like, Volkov went out there, beat the shit out of him, and then subbed him with a choke that we barely ever see. So
Exactly.
it's impressive. Tuivasa was top 5 at the time. So I
And they'd
think,
be relatively be beating the shit out of him that entire fight.
yeah,
Was dominating the fight, and then just to get the job done. And
nobody's said anything about this sub. So um, if you guys agree with that in the comments, let me know. I feel like it definitely deserves to be talked about more, but
100%.
overall, very impressive sub from Volkov there. But my pick for submission of the year, it just has to be, in my opinion, John Jones over Cyril Gahn. Because, most people, spoiler, his is Alexa Grasso's,
Yeah,
but he'll get
I
into
just
that.
have to.
He'll get into that one. But John Jones over Cyril Gahn, like John Jones coming back after 4 years, going in there against the number one heavyweight in the world in Cyril Gahn, who pushed Ngannou to the limit. And yeah, I know Ngannou was injured in that fight, whatever, but Ngannou struggled with Gahn on the ground. Um, not a very easy guy to just manhandle. And especially after coming back after 4 years, going in there, slipping a punch, taking him down, mounting him, mounted fucking guillotine, and just tapping him instantly in what, 2 minutes? Like, I don't see how that couldn't be sub of the year. If you think
Right.
it's Grasso, that's fine. I get it. There's an argument for that one as well. But when it comes to just the layoff, who he did it to, how fast he did it, how good he looked up a weight class, um, against a guy as dangerous as Cyril Gahn. So that has to be my sub of the year. Is John Jones' return at 285.
I mean, it's definitely a great. Like, it's 100% right up there. I agree.
Yeah.
Like, it's. I think I have it in my close second. I agree with it. I understand why it is. You make all the points for it. But I just think when it comes for Alexa Grasso, it's like to be able to finish to who you finished and like the level, nobody thought you were gonna go in there and win. She's a
Yeah.
huge favorite. You go in there, and not only do you win, you finish her, you submit her.
Yep.
Like we all know Shevchenko's credentials. We all know
And
the
was
level.
losing the fight up
We
until that
Yeah,
point.
we all know that she's a phenomenal fighter. She's one of the world champions. She's one of the greatest female
Second
fighters of
best women's fighter ever.
yeah,
So
one of the greatest female fighters of all time. So there's no debate in that, and to be able to go in there and submit her in the way you did was just phenomenal. And I think that's why I have it as my number one submission of the year.
I could totally see that. And I actually almost picked that one too, but I
Right,
saw there were so many people picking that one. And it's
just
not
got to
because I
make a
don't want to
different
be
pick.
cliche and I want to be different from everyone else, but it's just mainly because the John Jones was just, I don't think I reacted like that to a finish all year.
Oh yeah, that was
The
crazy.
way, maybe for the Aspinall knockout over
Right,
Pavlovich, that was probably our biggest reaction of the year,
that
I
one was
want to say.
crazy.
But the John Jones return, actually, our John Jones reaction was pretty nuts
It was
too.
nuts.
I think that was probably maybe a bit up
Yeah,
there, dude.
we should have got that one
Yeah,
on tape. That one was
but
nuts.
yeah, the John Jones return was just special, man. I feel like that will be remembered for a long fucking time. So will the Grasso sub, obviously,
100%.
but everything
Either way,
yeah,
picks.
it's whichever one you want to say. No complaints from us. I think they both deserve the award. So we'll go ahead and give we'll give an award to both.
Yeah.
We'll say they both are sub of the year.
Yeah,
We'll do a
both
half
sub
and
of-
half.
half.
So CTE sub of the year, John Jones and Alexa Grasso. Moving on. Best UFC card of the year. I feel like it's between two. I think it is either UFC 285 or UFC 290.
Yes,
I think those were the two best cards of the year.
100%.
UFC 285, you had obviously the two subs we just talked about.
Exactly.
You had John Jones submitting Cyril Gane. You had Shevchenko or Grasso finishing Valentina Shevchenko. You had Fight of the Year contender in Jeff Neal versus Shavkat. You had Mateus Gamrot versus Jalen Turner, which was another good fight. And then Bo Nickel finishing Jamie Pickett as well.
Yeah.
So I think that was, with the amount of moments on that card and even the undercard below the two title fights were great. And I think that's definitely, if you want to say 290, which I'll get into in a second, that's fine too. But for me, overall, I think I'd probably have to say it's UFC 285. But the argument for 290, we'll get into now. UFC 290, another phenomenal card. You had Volkanovski absolutely dismantling Yair
Right.
in that main event, which that finishing sequence
One of the more beautiful ones.
is fucking badass.
Yeah.
It's absolutely awesome. The co-main event, second best fight of the year, Brandon Moreno versus Pantoja. So, feature fight, Dricus du Plessis finishing Robert Whittaker, which no one fucking thought was going to happen.
No.
And then Jalen Turner versus Dan Hooker. Actually, now that I look at it, I think I got to give it to 290, honestly, dude. And then the opener is yet again Bo Nickel.
Yeah.
So finishing
and,
Val,
and that finish
was nuts.
disgusting.
Yeah. So I think
yeah,
actually,
I think
yeah.
I was gonna go with.
Forget about
290.
what I said about 285, which was a great card. That's why I said it's between these two. They're neck and neck, but the entire main card of 290 was just fucking
finish
awesome.
After finish after finish.
So, you had shocking upsets in Dricus du Plessis finishing Whittaker. You had back and forth war for the ages in Moreno versus Pantoja. You had an absolute iconic and just masterclass performance from Volk in the main event. And the Dan Hooker, Jalen Turner, another fight of the year. You had two fight of the year contenders on the same card and a crazy Bo Nickel finish to start it off. So I think the CTE award for best card of the year is UFC 290.
I agree.
I think it just has to be.
It
If
is.
you want to say 285, if you want to say 284,
You
which
make
is
a case.
yeah,
But 290 gets it done.
If you disagree, let us know. If you think that there was a card that was better, feel free to state your case
Debate
in the comments. So yeah. Anyways, next award we got worst performance of the year, which I'll go ahead and before I reveal who I think it was, which should be kind of obvious regarding our last video, but there was the Irene Aldana performance against Nunes. She looked like shit, was too scared to throw anything, got 50-44, looked terrible. There was Izzy's performance over Strickland, who got completely shut out and didn't really do anything and just got fucking, bitched by Strickland. There was Cyril Gane's dog shit performance against John Jones, who got subbed in 2 minutes and looked like he had seen a ghost. There was Amanda Lemos getting absolutely destroyed by Zhang Wei Li and getting, I think, 50-43, 50-44'd.
That was so bad.
So that was a domination. Dropped her like 5 fucking times or something. And then obviously there was the Josh Emmett getting destroyed by Ilya Topuria, who 50-42. That was probably the craziest scorecard of the year. Was Topuria dismantling Josh Emmett. So those are my honorable mentions for worst performance of the year. But there can only be one guy that deserves it.
Yeah.
And it has to
one
be
really truly shit the bed the way you did, you
the
little
fight
fuck,
that
Colby.
Overall capped off the year, Colby Covington and his
With
just
the worst performance for the ages.
absolutely
Will go down as arguably one of the worst title performances of all time.
100%. It was terrible.
Fucking pathetic.
And now he's saying, "Oh, I broke my foot in the first 30 seconds." We all know that's bullshit.
You're full of shit.
He's trying to cope with how bad his performance was, the way he was moving after the first round.
This is going to destroy him mentally.
Yeah, if you broke your foot in the first 30 seconds, you wouldn't have been able to blast a double leg in the fifth. So I'm calling bullshit on that. It was a terrible performance. The layoff clearly got to him. We can go on about how bad it was all day. We already did in our last couple videos if you want to watch it. Or our last video about 296, so go check that out. But yeah, awful performance from Colby, and I think he 100% deserves the award here for
100%.
worst performance.
You, Colby Covington, have been awarded CTE's worst performance of the
first
year.
Inaugural worst performance of the year award
goes to you, Colby
goes
Covington.
to Colby Chaos Covington for him shitting the bed at UFC 296 and giving us a awful main event. So fuck you.
Now onto a better note, though.
Now, we did worst performance.
Best
we move
performance.
on to best performance of the year. Few honorable mentions. John Jones over Cyril Gane, great performance. Leon Edwards over Usman in the trilogy, badass performance.
Masterclass striking.
49-46, made Usman look like he wasn't, a top
Usman
guy anymore.
We know, right?
Yeah, and he just went out there, shut him down. Did everything he needed to do, looked fucking great. I think that performance is what saves Leon for being shit on more than he does. So,
100%.
Awesome performance from Leon, and that one deserves its praise for sure. Alexander Volkanovski over Yair at 290.
Jamal Hill.
Jamal Hill over Glover, great performance. Just an overall one-sided ass beating for 5 rounds.
Right.
50-45. DDP finishing Robert Whittaker. Great performance. No one thought he was going to do that. Came out there, put away one of the best middleweights of all time with relative ease. So that was impressive as well. Deserves to be mentioned. And then another one that most people probably might not agree with. You may not, but is Bobby Green's 30-second KO over Grant Dawson.
Yeah.
I think that.
I mean, it just nobody thought he was going to do that. Coming there pretty old, riding that last surge of the wave, and just comes in there and starches him within 30 seconds.
My man's walks out to ski and then goes out there and
KOs
a guy who was, I think, on a 9-fight win streak in 30 seconds. So that deserves to be mentioned as well. But the overall best performance of the year, could it be anything else? Sean Strickland over Israel Adesanya at UFC 293.
Strickland.
Definitely the performance that has been talked about and keeps getting talked about the most.
Performance for the ages. It'll be talked about for years and years to come.
100%.
Nobody expected that to be able to do what he did. It's just phenomenal, and
it really was. It was extremely impressive.
Hats off to him. And hopefully you get the job done against Dickless to Pussy, baby.
Hopefully. We're pulling for you, Sean. Us here at CTE, we want you to have a good title reign.
Oh, hell
Nothing against DDP, but
everything against DDP.
But
everything against.
We
DDP.
want our boy Sean to have that belt for a while, so we're rooting for you here, and we'll have those 297 predictions within a couple weeks. But overall, that's the performance of the year. Just I don't think there's obviously the ones I mentioned.
I don't think there's another case to be made.
Yeah, I mean maybe Leon over Usman in the trilogy, which was great, but when it comes to just masterclass that nobody expected and to utterly shut out the best middleweight of all time in his home fucking country or hometown, whatever, on short notice to go in there, do what he did. Could it be any better?
Yeah.
So I think hands down, CTE best performance of the year goes to Deshaun Strickland.
For sure.
That'll do it for the awards, boys. If you agree with what we've said, if you agree with our picks, let us know. If you don't, state your case. If you got any different opinions, feel free. And this is the first annual CTE Awards. So pretty solid year overall.
100%.
A lot of great moments, a lot of great fights, and yeah, we'll be doing this from now on at the end of next year. We'll see how differently things play out from now until then. So, yeah, that'll do it, boys. We will see you fuckers in the next video. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, leave a like, subscribe, and yeah, that'll do it.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animals.
Peace.